So I'm working on my taxes today, and I realized that everybody's still talking about Bernie Sanders' taxes. And I wanted to unpack this real quick. I wanted to unpack the underlying premise behind what they expect to find in Bernie Sanders' taxes. Right? It's first of all, it's fake outrage. And I'm allergic to fake outrage. I'm allergic to it because it reminds me so much of the Christian persecution complex that I see with a lot of Christians who feel like they're suffering in America and their religious freedoms are being taken away because they can't discriminate, or because they can't persecute other people who don't believe the way they believe. So they're the ultimate victim. It's a fake outrage. I can't stand it. And if we're able to call it out in Republicans, we sure as hell need to be able to call it out on us, because this whole thing about Bernie Sanders tax returns is baloney. You can go back and find plenty of tax returns of his coming up all the way to 2014. And we are not even at the end of the tax season. Yes, this is the last week. He might end up filing an extension, which would just blow their brains, right? They'll be like, oh God, he's got something to hide. But what the underlying premise of this entire debate, or this entire fake outrage rather, is that there's going to be a revelation in his taxes. And the only revelation they can really think of is the fact that Bernie Sanders might actually be a millionaire. And you know, if Bernie Sanders is a millionaire, then that means everything Bernie Sanders says about income inequality is absolutely fake, because he's a part of the top 1%. Because you can't possibly be in the top 1% and fight for people in the bottom 99%. Right? I couldn't possibly owe the government as much money as I owe them right now, God help me, and still fight for people who get tax refunds. Because if you find out, oh, Ben makes X number of figures a year, then all of a sudden my critique of class is invalid, because if I really believed in socialism or democratic socialism, then I would make a vow to be poor my entire life. This is the argument coming from liberals, from Democrats, not from Republicans. Just like, and it reminds me of the birther movement, right? The birther movement got its legs underneath Hillary Clinton, but it was carried to fruition by the Republicans. So right now we're seeing another example of this, saying that if you make over, let's say you make 6 figures a year, you couldn't possibly be legitimate in your critique or sincere in your critique. You are a hypocrite in your critique of class, of your class critique, because you're in the top 1%. And Bernie Sanders, he might actually have a net worth of $1 million. So therefore, everything about his campaign is completely invalid. That's what they're waiting for. They're waiting for him to show that he's worth, has a home that's worth, whatever his net worth is going to be. And somehow that invalidates him. Number one, Bernie Sanders is not a damn socialist. He is a democratic socialist. He may be an American socialist, which is totally different than the international socialist. He's definitely not a Hugo Chavez, Fidel Castro, seize all of private property and give it to the state socialist. And the fact that we have to make this distinction to Democrats shows the lengths to which they are willing to go in order to protect the establishment and to protect Queen Slay Hillary. They're willing to eviscerate their entire positions on the middle class, on Keynesian economics, just so that they can protect the ascension and the coronation of Queen Hillary. Well, listen, it hasn't been a coronation, in fairness, because Bernie is starting to give her hell, right? But they want to ensure her ascension to the throne. And so they're willing to completely obliterate their own positions on the middle class. And it makes you wonder, do they ever give a damn about the middle class? Because they're so adept to these red scare tactics. They are so equipped to argue against big government. They're so equipped to argue in favor of globalization to the expense, at the expense rather, of labor. They are so equipped for this neoliberal perversion of capitalism that a democratic socialist who wants to save capitalism from itself falls prey to their propaganda. Not Republican propaganda, Democratic propaganda. So this entire farce over his taxes is about maybe Bernie Sanders is a millionaire. And if he's a millionaire and he actually has mutual funds and mutual funds, maybe he has a fraction of his mutual fund that is invested in by Goldman Sachs. Then all of a sudden, his entire campaign is a facade, ladies and gentlemen. Bernie Sanders needs to go home and sit down because he's a fraud. He's not a real socialist. If he was a real socialist, he would live in a hovel. Propaganda from Democrats. If you want to know what real democratic socialism is, I suggest tune in on Thursday nights to the Scandinavian perspective while he breaks that down for you. Because this idea, here's the biggest hypocrisy of it all, right? They want absolutism forced on you if you are their opponent, but they want you to have absolutism in terms of viewing them as perfect, right? So this is what happens. Hillary Clinton, no matter what she does, no matter how much money she takes from special interests, no matter how much money she takes from Wall Street to speak, no matter what she does, she is flawless and she can never be challenged. She can never be wrong because she is Queen Slay Hillary. But Bernie Sanders, if he has a damn mutual fund, he is completely invalidated. This is the fatuousness and ridiculousness of your democratic establishment. Protected by this media facade, this media elite, this liberal, neoliberal media who don't have the wherewithal, the backbone, or the hubris to fight back against conservatism half as good as they fight against progressivism.